Welcome to Passive Aggressive Income. This program may contain strong language. The content may not be suitable for audiences under the age of 17. We understand many of our listeners may not agree with all of our personal viewpoints. We in no way, shape, or form mean to be offensive to anyone. Our show notes will provide all of our source material included for each episode. Now let's get passive aggressive. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Passive Aggressive Income. I am Mims and I'm here with Lexie. She is going to be taking over the reins today for this episode, so I will hand it over.
Thanks, Mim. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about something that I think, whether you are a business owner or just a human existing out in the world, it's really important information. We're going to talk about how to do small talk and maintain professional relationships.
Ooh, yes, this is going to be fun.
hmm So, whether you're a business owner or just trying to find or maintain clients, if you're a new employee and trying to get to know your coworkers, that's the situation that I'm in right now. Or maybe the plus one of a work event for your partner. And you just need to know how to talk to people without feeling uncomfortable. So that's what this episode is going to be about. I'm going to discuss how to maintain your professional relationships and give some advice on how to make small talk with strangers.
I think this is really important because there's so many people that are nervous and awkward and maybe
Mhm.
have a little bit of anxiety or maybe a lot like me.
Oh yeah.
So we will be happy to take any tips that we can get.
Yes, and I like to say that like I'm a recovering introvert because I used to be so anxious about like talking to people and I was really shy as a kid. And so these are things that I've had to work on really hard for the past couple years. So hopefully this episode will help people like me. So why is it important? In my opinion, there should be like a little bit of a line, a boundary between friends and your clients or like being friends with your clients or coworkers, but you can definitely be on friendly terms. And in fact, I would suggest being on friendly terms with those people that you're working with on a regular basis. When I was trying to actively grow my business, Star Media, my husband and I would joke that if I became friends with my clients, then it would be harder for them to end their services with me because
True.
they'd feel bad because they'd see me as a person and someone that they like enjoy getting together with once a month. So that's definitely a plus of being on friendly terms with these people. And when you are an active part of people's lives and maintain your relationships with them, then they're more likely to recommend you to their friends and family. Or if you end up looking for a new job down the road, then they're going to give you a good recommendation because they're like, yeah, they're a good person. They do good work.
Right.
And when you are good at what you do and you're able to talk to anyone from the company, you're more likely to get promoted too. If it's not recommendations, you're more likely to get promoted. And that comes with a raise. And that's always a good thing.
Yep.
So, just in general, it's good to maintain professional relationships and learn how to talk to people just because you're gonna find more success in life doing that and make some lasting relationships. So, how do you maintain professional relationships? The first thing is, I mean, really the biggest tip that I could give is to just be genuinely interested in the other person and what they do. So remember what they say when you're talking to them, especially if they get really excited about something that they're passionate about. And then like I would actually like take notes after I would meet with a client and be like, they talked about this. This is their wife's name. Their kids are into this. And so you can bring those things up in conversations at later dates and they'll be like, wow, like they really like listen to me. And that's gonna make
Mm.
me feel good.
I think that's important that you underline listen to me because there's a lot of people that will talk and then you are listening, but what is one of my biggest pet peeves is like they also have like a story that can like top your story that's
Oh
exactly the
yeah.
same. And that really irritates me. It's like, okay, cool, but I mean, I had this experience and it's I don't know. It just kind of like
Yeah.
diminishes what you were saying in the beginning.
For sure. Don't just like listen to someone to like one up them or be like,
Mm,
oh, I know I can talk about myself. Like people like to talk about themselves. Let them talk about themselves and like listen and then talk to them about those things. It's
right.
important in maintaining any relationships, not just professional relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And then another tip is just to keep in touch with them. Sometimes it's hard to like remember to check in with people if you've maybe stopped working with them or if you've moved jobs, but maintaining those relationships are is like I said, it's really important because who knows what kind of opportunities might arise down the road. So just check in with them every so often. If you are actively working with them, then make sure you're communicating with any updates on whatever project you're working on together. And if you haven't talked in several months and, they cross your mind, then maybe just send a, hey, how you doing message or ask to grab a coffee and catch up. I'm actually grabbing a coffee this week with one of my past clients who I haven't seen in a couple months because like we really got along and I don't want to just lose that relationship just because I'm focusing on a different industry now in my career.
Right, and you don't know where you're gonna be at in 5 years, and you don't
Hmm.
wanna just, be like, "Well, that's not really part of my life anymore," so you
Yeah.
kinda, like, lose that relationship.
Right. It's like having a relationship like that can kind of act as like a backup plan if you need some help from someone, whether it be professional or like a recommendation. It's just good to keep those kind of relationships. So make sure you're checking in with them every so often. And if you are actively working with them, then make sure you can add value to their lives, that they see you as someone who makes their life better or easier or more fun by offering advice or making sure that if you're pitching your services to them, it's actually genuinely what they need. And being able to offer solutions, those are all things that are going to make people remember you in a positive way.
Absolutely.
And sort of along those lines and adding value, make sure that if, they're doing something that like you don't agree with, or I don't know, it can be hard to be honest with people, but I think that's a really valuable trait to have in professional relationships. Like if you're working on a project together and you really think that like something that they're doing could be done a better way, then bring that up to them. Don't be an asshole about it, but definitely like talk about it. And even if it's going to make the other person unhappy, and maybe it's going to like, cause some sort of disagreement, but down the road, they're going to appreciate you for like being honest. And
Mm,
maybe it's on you. Maybe you're not going to meet a deadline. Then communicate that with them as soon as you know, and they're going to appreciate that the deadline didn't pass and you're not done, that they know what to expect ahead of time. It's going to make them trust you in the future.
right.
And also seek out their feedback. Actually take into consideration what sort of unique experiences they have and what kind of advice they would have to offer you. And if it's good advice, then implement it in whatever services or, whatever role that you have in your job. And then keep your commitments. If you can't, communicate and reschedule. Don't just let it go by because, again, it goes back to the trust thing. When you think about having a relationship with a partner, like one of the
Mhm.
first things that comes up for me is like I need to trust that person, but it's really not that much different for other relationships in your life, like your coworkers. Like you need to rely on those people to have a successful business.
Right, yeah, and I would rather have almost excessive communication,
Hmm.
about, like, things that are worthy of it, not just random shit like,
Right.
"Hey, did you see that yesterday it rained?" Like, I don't need that. But if they're, like, excessively messaging me or, keeping up, just keeping me informed on, like, a project or something, I'd rather have that than, like, radio silence.
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, if it's going to be one way or the other, tell me about each little task that you finished and how it went for you. I'd rather have that.
Right.
And then another way to maintain your professional relationships, especially if you're not really seeing them super often, but maybe you follow them on social media and you notice like a milestone happen, like they passed a year of podcasting, or they, had just had a baby or whatever the case may be, then reach out to them to celebrate their milestones. You don't necessarily have to go buy a gift and send a card or take them out to dinner, but a quick message just to acknowledge that they did something that's really cool can go a long way.
Absolutely.
So now the part you've all been waiting for, mastering the art of small talk. Small talk can be extremely uncomfortable. especially if you're introverted. It can be really overwhelming. And honestly, like the thought of having to talk to strangers may have you debating even whether you want to go to an event or not. Like you might cancel your plans because you're like, damn, that just sounds like way too much for me to handle. So let's talk about how to get through it. So here's the secret. This is like, if you take anything away from this podcast, take away this. People like to talk about themselves. So get them to talk so you don't have to. That's the art of small talk.
Oh, love that.
Yeah. So, prepare like a list of maybe some topic ideas ahead of time. Like, honestly, maybe keep a list of questions or topics in your phone that you can kind of discreetly look at under the table or go to the bathroom and be like, oh man, like, what do I say to this person? And then like ask those things of them. Make sure that they're not yes or no questions. They can be easily expanded on and just like let them take the stage, let them talk, and you can just listen and ask follow-up questions.
I love that. Just putting the pressure on them.
Yeah, exactly. And talking about yourself is easy. Like you can talk about your passions and so like that will put them at ease too because you're making them feel like you're genuinely interested in what they have to say and that it's going to make the situation a lot less awkward.
Yeah, great tip.
Hmm. Yeah, so sort of going back to what we talked about already, but just being an active listener. So when there is a lull in the conversation, you can ask another follow-up question and you can continue that conversation so it doesn't get awkward.
Yeah.
And also just find some common ground, find out what they like to do in their free time, see if you have any shared hobbies. And if there really isn't any crossover, if you are just two extremely different people, and just ask them about the things that make them excited and the things that they're passionate about. And maybe you won't really know like technical terms and you won't know how to like ask, oh, so what about this specific thing? But just be like, tell me more about that. Like, tell me
Yeah.
more. Just, taking a genuine interest in them again. And that's going to make them feel appreciated. And on the plus side, you might just learn something new about something you never knew existed, or you didn't really know how, like, this sport is played. And it could be fun. Think about it. Think about small talk as a way to like educate yourself about how other people live and other things that are out there. And like it should be fun. Small talk gets a bad rep, but it can be fun.
Yeah, and I'm gonna actually mention something that works for my husband a lot. He always asks, "Do you have any trips planned?" And that is like a big way to like, kind of talk about like really anything
Yeah.
and have fun about it too. Because then they'll be like, "What about you?" And then we'll talk about us, and then it'd be like just a good way to start the conversation
Hmm.
on a light and breezy note because almost everybody has a vacation plan. It's like you
Right.
can't really go wrong with that question.
Mhm. Or if they don't have a vacation plan, then you can be like, oh, like, where have you been? Like, what's a really cool experience you had on a past vacation? And from
Mhm.
there, there's so many branches. You're like, oh, what like adventures did you do? What kind of food did you eat? Like, did
Yeah.
you, get a really good massage? Tell me about all of these different things. That's a really good conversation opener.
Yeah, it really is. And I would stay away from religious or
Oh, yeah.
political conversations because, uh everybody's either one way or the other, and it's just kinda really not the best place to talk about things if you're having a professional conversation, but you're trying to keep things light, and
Hmm.
that's just not your go-to.
No, yeah, those are those topics. I'm glad you mentioned this because I would have forgotten because to me it's just like kind of common sense at this point. So I'm glad you
Right.
brought that up. But yeah, professional situations, do not talk about religion, do not talk about politics. Leave those things off the table. Very good advice. Other things you can talk about is just like, this is a professional relationship you're having. Ask about their work experience. How did
Mhm.
you get to where you were? Like when you were promoted, like what steps did you take to get there? What kinds of things do you do on a daily basis when you arrive at work? Like what are your go-to things that need to get done in the morning? Or what kinds of interesting people have you met along the way through this like
Mm.
crazy interesting career you've had? I mean, if you listened to last week's episode, Mims talked about some really weird stories that she's had as a property manager, and like that kind of stuff is so interesting. So just getting to know the person and like what they do and what their lives look like can create a lot of conversation.
Yeah, if you find yourself in a conversation with somebody that loves what they do, that is a really great way to get them talking and for you
Mhm.
to learn a lot about things that you may not know.
Yeah.
Like when somebody is like, "Oh, so how's work these days?" I love that question because I could go on and on about it. And if
Mhm.
they're willing to listen and they actually like genuinely want to know, and they like ask me, "Okay, well, what would you do in this situation?" or that, we're going to be talking all night long. So
Yeah.
it's great when you ask things like that because it's very open ended, and then we can always switch it back to, "What do you do?" So that's a great
Yeah.
point.
Yep, exactly. And I think the whole, like, sort of the point of this episode too is just shifting the way you think about what small talk is and like how it can benefit you instead of it just being a waste of time, because small talk's really not a waste of time. It can help you develop your like professional life. It can create some friends down the road.
Mhm.
Like you can learn new things about how the world works. And so like it's, it can feel awkward, but it is a good idea to sort of shift how you think about small talk and sort of like dealing with work events where you're putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. So think of it as also like a networking opportunity, a learning opportunity. I like to ask people about like what advice they've been given in their career or what sort of
Mm.
advice they have to offer in their line of work. And if you are like a business owner, for example, see if they have a need that you're able to fill. Like this could
Ooh,
be an opportunity for you to gain a new client, even if it's not the point of you guys getting together.
absolutely. And I'm going to mention my husband again because he goes to the real estate meetups, and
Mhm.
he doesn't know anybody there. He's there to meet people
Yep,
in the field that he wants to go into or that we're into already. And small talk is like the name of the game
it
in
is.
this. And what he's like a two-prong type of person because we do real estate, but he also has his electrical company that he does, as his 9 to 5.
Yep.
So he'll wear that attire, trying to break that barrier, say, "Hey, if you have electrical needs, let me know." But then also, I have my real estate that you can
Hmm.
also talk about. So this is great for people that want to get into things like that as far as networking and opening up doors that you wouldn't know or wouldn't be able to if you didn't go to these meetups. So this
Hmm.
is top-notch information.
Yeah, I love that Jake does that. I think that's such a smart business move. Yeah, I know that we talked a little bit about that for our listeners. You should go back. We actually had him on the podcast. So go back and listen to that episode because he gave a lot of really good advice. So just to sort of wrap up this episode, yeah, I'll give some sort of personal experience of me being like a recovering introvert. I have owned a business for the last 4.5 years and have always really considered myself to be kind of like socially awkward and shy. And so when I started a business, I would absolutely dread trying to find new clients. Like it would be a rock in the pit of my stomach. And finding new clients is necessary when you're starting a business.
Right.
But honestly, it gave me so much anxiety to talk to strangers. And then I worried that that anxiety would make me feel awkward. And then it would make the person I'm talking to feel awkward. And then no one would want to work with me. And it would kind of like spiral, right?
Right.
And I just had to like take a step back and be like, okay, these are just people. Like, yes, they might be
Mm,
people who are going to pay me and like, whether like their decision or the accumulation of all the people I'm talking to's decisions are going to like fund my livelihood or not. Like, yes, that's anxiety inducing, but when it comes down to it, we're all just people trying to relate to other people. And
yeah.
also being a photographer sort of adds another layer on top of that because I had to like interact with these people when I'm working with them. And I had
Right.
to make them feel comfortable in front of a camera. And so when I'm uncomfortable, they're going to be uncomfortable. So in order to be successful doing that kind of stuff, you really need to like work on your communication. And through Star Media, my business, I have met people from all walks of life. And you really doing that, you learn how to talk to all sorts of different people. So over the years, I was able to learn and transform the way I communicate. And I honestly feel like I could hold a conversation with almost anybody, which is crazy to think of that now. Like if you had asked me a few years ago, I would have been like, that's not Lexie. That's not that person.
It's funny how if you do the thing that you fear the most, that what kind of person you can come out to be at through the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I love that. It's putting yourself in uncomfortable situations is not a bad thing. And like being socially awkward is not an inherent trait. Well, like maybe it is. Maybe you could be like kind of self-conscious and you could have social anxiety, but that's not you forever. You actually can overcome it. You can learn how to be an effective communicator. It just takes practice, putting yourself in those situations,
Mhm.
making yourself uncomfortable and planning for those things, writing your notes, getting your like list together, and then just putting yourself out there. It might be uncomfortable, but the long-term payoffs are super worth it.
Right, and other people are just as awkward and, like, not knowing what to say and saying
Hmm.
things, perfectly, every time that they say things, so it's not just you, and other people may not even think that you're being any type of way as far as
Yeah,
being awkward or anything. It may be just all in your head, and
right,
that's tripping you up, so just know that they're also a human being and that they also feel these things unless they're freaking, I don't know, like a next level type of person, which there are
right.
people out there like that. They're like, I don't get nervous. I don't get scared, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I don't know about that.
Good for you.
Right. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's perfectly normal. And the other person will most likely feel the same way that you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And if like you're trying to pitch yourself to new clients, like that person on the other end might be feeling awkward and overthinking like what if I don't like their services? Like what if I don't want to work? Like how
Mm,
do I communicate with that with them?
right.
How do I ask them questions about what they do? So it's definitely a two-way street. No, we're all just people trying to get through life and maintain relationships and find new friendships and make money, and you just kind of have to think of that fact. We're just humans. And I hope that this episode was helpful for the other introverts or recovering introverts out there. I do encourage all of our listeners to go out there and put yourself in an uncomfortable situation, whether it's actually going to a networking meeting or an event, or just like going to a gym and like complimenting
Mm.
someone, just like starting up a conversation or saying, like, hey, I like your hair. Something as simple as that. You can start small and see what happens from there.
I love that. I really do because you're starting to open up and just try to put yourself out there without being like too forward and just,
Hmm.
like random little conversations here and there really prime you up for the real deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you to our listeners. We will see you next Monday for another one.
Bye.
Bye. Passive Aggressive Income was written, recorded, edited, and produced by co-hosts and creators Mims and Lexie. We truly want to thank our listeners, collaborators, friends, and family that continuously support us for all the love we receive. If you enjoy our show, please give us a glowing rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, follow us on Facebook and Instagram to see what we are up to. For any inquiries, please email passiveaggressiveincome2023@gmail.com. Episodes of Passive Aggressive Income are available wherever you listen to podcasts, so make sure to subscribe and like us on your favorite streaming platform.